Today I'm going to make this serving board. I have the template right here. It has 3 little pockets in it and a center area for your dip or whatever, a little glass container to sit in there if you so desire. I'm going to be making this. I've already done the glue up and I've pretty much got these ready to go. We have some walnut, cherry, and maple, and then the repeat. So I've put together 2 pieces of this because I want it to be the double thickness. So I've never done this before. So if you've never done this before and you're interested in do it, hang out because I'll show you all my mistakes. I'll show you everything else. So I've thought this out in my head, and my flush trim router bit is not going to cut both of these pieces at the same time. So what I've decided I'm going to do is I'm going to make the bottom piece first, complete, and then I'm going to lay out the top piece, cut the holes in it, rough cut the holes in it, and then glue the 2 together, and then I'll be able to use the bottom piece as my template to get the top piece to match it. So if it sounds like a lot, it kind of is, but to me it's kind of a waste to have a, something like this that's only this thick, where your containers are 3/8 or a ½ inch deep or whatever, 5/8 deep. So I'm thinking this is going to be a lot better. It'll be a taller tray, it'll hold more stuff, so that's what I want to do. So the first thing I want to do is find the center of this template so that I can mark it, so that I can get the exact same layout on both pieces of material. I'm going to mark the center of my maple strip right here in the middle so that I can use that as a layout on both pieces. So let's get that done and then we'll get started with the rest. Hi everybody, I'm Jim Deerdorf and this is Detroit DIY. Let's make a bowl. There's no way of me knowing exactly what center of this template is, and that's kind of okay. So I'm just going to set it on here where it looks balanced to me, where this strip looks like it's running through the center of this hole in the middle, and then I'm going to just set my level on here where it's about halfway across, and I'm going to mark it with a Sharpie, and at that point I'm going to call it good. I want to leave a little extra room over to one side for the Sharpie, the width of the Sharpie marker here. So I'm just going to mark it right across all 4 of these. And whether this is exactly center or not, it doesn't matter. It's going to allow me to get my setup exactly the same when I do it, when I get it all laid out. Aesthetically, I'm okay with that. It's a little bit off, so I think what I'll do is I will just mark off of these Sharpie marks. I'll just mark my maple strips and get me a line down that maple strip. I'll show you what I mean here. Let me hold it in place. See, I'm a little bit off center, but it doesn't matter. Like I say, it's just a reference line. So just so long as I mark that maple strip off center, we'll be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and get that marked, and then I'm going to mark this one, trace everything out on here, and then start working some of this over. This is going to be my bottom. So now what I want to do is just straight down from this line, I want to get me a little mark right on this maple. The same thing on this side. And then the exact same thing on that one. And then what we'll do is just draw us a line straight across here. I'm not worried about a perfect alignment because my flush trim router bit will be able to follow whatever I do in here. but I do want this maple strip to be really close to the center of that hole, or close enough that your eyeballs won't be able to detect the difference. Same thing with this one. Get a line across there. Now I'm going to line this up with these lines. And I am going to trace this template out. Now I'm just going to move the template over to that side. I put an X here just so I know that that's the top of each of these pieces. And then when I come and set the template back on, it'll be a little easier to figure out. So with the template all traced on, there we go. Now I'm going to set this to the side for right now because this is going to be the top piece and this is going to be our bottom. So I'm going to do the same thing, trace that template on there, and then we'll get ready to start removing some material. So I've got a 1-inch Forstner bit set up in my drill press. If you don't have a drill press, you can remove this material with your router. You just have to do little bites at a time. I've already hit 3 holes in it right here, just to give you an idea of what I've got going on. And I think I want to go just a little bit deeper. I'm going to do a little measuring here and make sure that I'm feeling good about it and how much material is left in the bottom. So I'm going to get going through that, and then we'll come back and we'll drill a couple more holes in it. With a 3/8 setup block, I've got it to where it is just barely putting any pressure on the tip of that bit. So with that, we are ready to take it out. And I shouldn't have to go much deeper than 3/8, just a little bit, to get it all cleaned up and get all these little marks out that Forstner bit's going to leave. So I am just going to keep going until I've got all of these with the bulk of this material removed. Alright, I've got the bulk of the material removed. It's a little too big for my drill press for me to get the center really good, and I could probably only get one more anyway, so it'll be okay. I am going to take my jigsaw now and I'm going to cut this out close to, but a little bit away from this line. The router will get the rest of it. So I'm going to go ahead and get that cut out, and then we'll get the template on and we can get down to business. I'm using a Bosch clean wood blade. It's a brand new blade, so hopefully it cuts very nicely and doesn't shake all over the place. And I know this looks like a little bit of a rough mess, but it'll be okay. Okay, there we go. So now we can get the template on here and start going to work. I'm going to do basically the same thing with this one. Cut the outside diameter, and then I'm going to drill holes in each of these so that I can remove a lot of this material with the jigsaw, but leaving enough so that if I don't have an exact perfect alignment, that the inside will all wind up okay as well as the outside. So this one I might cut even a little further away from the line, just to give me that little bit of extra room in case there's a mistake. So I did transfer my X from out here to here for my template. So I'm going to get the dust cleaned off of this and get the template on, and then we will be ready to go. I've got my double face tape on the wood. I have not pulled the backing off of it yet. I'm just kind of trying to get an idea here of how I can get this lined up the way I want it. It's going to be a little tricky because there's just so much going on here. So I'm going to get this off. I have a good idea. I'm just going to use my lines in the center circle and be hopeful that I hit on the money. Get all this backing off. Alright, with all the backing off, we're ready to get this on. I've dusted off the side that's going down on the tape really good. That's just not bad. Alright. Well, there's these little pucks of wood left in here that the Forstner bit didn't get. You can knock them off with a chisel if you want, just get them out of the way, but it doesn't matter. The router's going to get them as well. So we're not going to take a bunch more material out of this. I'm just going to go deep enough to get these little dimples out from the Forstner bit. Once I get them removed, that is going to be the depth. So there's 3/8 of an inch of material remaining once I remove that dimple. So if I have to go a little beyond that, I'm okay. Alright, I think that stuck down there pretty good. I'm hopeful. I have some plexiglass to make another base for my router if I need to, but I believe that my my plunge base is going to be okay. I'm pretty sure it is. So we're going to try this plunge base, and because once I get here I know it's fine. It's this widest spot right here where it might actually try to slip off of the material. So we're going to find out. I'm going to get my router in it, and we're going to be using a bowl bit. I'll show you that here in a second. So technically these are round nose bits or bowl bits. I ordered 3 of them from Amazon. I'll put a link down in the description for these, and these are what they call top bearing bits. And this bearing is going to ride on this template so that we can get this exact shape. I would really like to use this bigger one, but this big bearing is not going to ride in these tight areas at all. So it's just going to leave big spots that I don't want left. And this one is a little bit better, but it's still not going to get in there. Now I have one more that's a smaller one, which is a shame because this bigger one would probably get right through most of this stuff. I could cover more area with this guy right here, but it looks like to me we're probably going to be using this guy. At least to do this outside edge, I'll use this guy. Then I might go to this bigger one and clean stuff up because I won't have to worry about getting the pattern. So I want to get the pattern done first and at the right depth. Maybe do a little bit of cleanup and see what we got. So I think for now we're going to go with the smallest one, and then we might switch out once we get the pattern. So I'm going to get this in the router and we'll get started. I've got this clamped down to my workbench and I'm going to start on this one right here. And we're just going to ease into it nice and slow. So I'm just going to release the router. I've got the stop set where I want it, and we're just going to dig into it here. So I've got my router set on about 3.5, and I believe we should be good. If I have any issues with chatter or anything, I'm going to work over to the edge first and then go ahead and route out the outside edge. Okay, that's the outside edge. I'm going to clean all the crap out of here, and then we will clean the rest of this out, and then we'll take a look at it once I get this all cleaned out. And for the rest of this, I'm just going to kind of plunge in right here and just work my way around until I got this whole bottom base cleaned out just the same. I have this one all routed out, and as you can see, it cleaned it up pretty good. I sanded it just a little bit because I was concerned with the bottom is a little bit bumpy, and I didn't want it to remain that way. But I will use some 150 sandpaper just by hand, and it sanded out pretty good. With just a little bit of work, it'll smooth right out. And all I did was use the router and just move it all over the place in here to cut out the excess once I got this done. I didn't switch bits. The reason for that is the depth. I didn't want to mess with the depth adjustment, so I'm just going to use that bowl bit and do the same thing, finish all these up and get them all cleaned out. So I'm pretty happy with that. I burnt it a little bit right here and a little bit right here, so that'll just be a little bit of extra sandpaper work to get that cleaned up. Try not to do it on the others, on these when I do these, but at any rate, that's what we got. I wish I could go a little less, but I can't because the bearing is just barely riding on the template, so I can't raise it up any higher. This is as high as I could get it and still have the bearing actually touch the template, and it's just barely riding on the top edge of the template. So I wish I could have controlled the depth a little more. I'm not sure how much thickness I have at the bottom. It's not a lot, maybe 3/16 of an inch, I believe, of material remaining in the bottom. I don't think there's a 1/4 inch, but there might be a 1/4 of an inch. So at any rate, I'm going to get these done and we'll come back and take a look. I've got it all routed out, but something went wrong. I've discovered what has went wrong. The first one that I did, the bottom is semi-smooth, very little sanding to get it cleaned up. The second one I did is a little bit more bumpy, but not bad. It's nothing I can't sand out. The third one, and the center are really bumpy. And apparently the depth changed on me a little bit. So this being the first one that I did, if I set the router in here, you can see that it changed. It's deeper than when I started. So what has happened, I didn't check it before I used this bit. Like I say, they're brand new. There's a set screw right here that is now missing, and it allowed the bearing, it allowed everything to shift. Also, I believe that the bit maybe came out of the collet a little bit when this happened. So where this little set screw went to, I have no idea, but I'm going to look through my chips and see if I can find it. But at any rate, I should have checked to make sure they were tight. It was a little bit of a workout for this bit, and maybe I'll look for some different ones online. All in all, I'm pretty happy with what I got. These are apparently a little bit deeper than the first one. It's nothing that I can visually see, so I'm not worried about that. The bottom still has integrity, so I'm not too worried about that. But the bottom is, I can feel it's thinner on these two than here. So whatever happened shortly after I started on the second one. So I'm not sure, but it's something that definitely I know to keep my eyes on now. And you know, kind of how it goes. My first time doing it, I didn't expect it to be perfect. It's a learning curve for me. So, and this is something that I want to get into a little bit, and I want to make some more stuff. I've ordered a few more templates, so there's a few more things I want to make. So I'm definitely going to figure some stuff out, and I'll show you guys as I go. I'll show you my mistakes and how I'm going to get through them. This is going to require some sanding to get these cleaned up. I don't think it's a real big deal. I like it. I like how it looks. So, and I think it'll even look better once we get, you know, that additional height on here and get them more looking like a, you know, a deeper bowl. I think I'll like it even more. So at any rate, that's what we've got right now. I'm going to either steal the set screw from another bit over there and put in this one, or find the one that came out. It's probably in this pile of chips somewhere. I have a magnet, but it's not here, so I can't use that. But I'll find it, or I'll steal one out of there, and away we go. So at any rate, I'm going to start just cleaning this up a little bit. Next, we're going to get it on the router table and clean this out. Then we can get the template off of it. And then I want to get all this cleaned up before I put this one on top. So that's what we're going to do next. Alright guys, I think I forgot to hit record. I'm not sure what happened there. But I've got it in the router table here, and I'm just trimming up this outside edge to the template. And mistake number 2 just happened. Somehow, I don't know how, my router bit raised up a little bit, and the bearing actually came up off of the template right here. It did it a little bit right here too, and caused me a little issue right here. The rest of it's going to be okay. So at any rate, let's trim the rest of this off. I've readjusted. The bearing is well on the template, and trim the rest of this off. Alright, I'm not sure what's going on, but it just did it again. So maybe my bit's slipping up on me. we got to investigate and figure out what's going on. The bit seems to be good and tight. I don't know how it could be riding up. That was about where I had it set. So it doesn't. The last time I used this flush trim bit, I did not have any problems like this. So I'm not sure what's going on, but we're going to tighten it up a little tighter and see what we get. This one's obviously not going to be perfect by no means now that that has happened, but it wasn't going to be perfect in the first place. So I'm not super heartbroken, but I didn't want this. I didn't want anything like that to happen. The sad thing is it ruined this template, so I won't be able to use this one again. I'll have to replace it. Now I was kind of liking what I was getting out of it, but alright, we'll start right here and finish it up. So I'll show you right here what happened. As you can see, it cut a little notch in it right there, and right here, and it got it a little bit right here. So it started right there the first time before I realized it. Then I only made it to here before it raised up again and did it again. So not the end of the world, but definitely not what anybody would want to have happen. So I'm going to pop this template off, get this thing cleaned up, and then we'll take a look at it before I move on to the next step. I'm going to try and see if I can't figure out something to fix that up a little bit. Since we had a couple of mistakes on the outside edge and it's in the walnut, I picked up some walnut wood filler and I'm going to fill that in. This is not going to be perfect by any means, but that's okay. I didn't expect the very first one of these I ever made to be perfect. So, you know, like the bull bits or the cove bits that I bought, to me are too long for the thickness of the wood, so I'm going to have to do some research on that, and I'm okay with that. I'm not worried that it's perfect. I just want to be able to pull it off and have it be good, and then I can work the kinks out on the next one. At least I know what to watch for. I've got my holes drilled in this piece so that I can take my jigsaw and cut all these out. I'm going to do that in a few minutes, and then once I get that cut out, I'll be able to glue it on here. But before I do that, I want to take this 150 grit sandpaper and just clean up the bottoms of these really good where the router left the grooves in it. and make sure that all of this is nice and smooth, so that when my router bit runs in here to cut the profiles on this piece that I'm going to glue on, I'll have nice edges for that, including where the router bit raised up and put some grooves in here. So this will be nice and rounded for me too. I don't think it's going to be too bad, but it's going to be what it's going to be. So it's going to look nice when it's done. That's all that matters. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get these all sanded out, and like I say, I'm just going to use some 150 grit, and I want to do this before that gets deeper. So once I put that on, then it'll be more of a reach inside of there to get this done. So it's just going to be a little bit of elbow grease. I don't think it'll be too bad. And then when I sand out the wood putty on these sides, I'll just use a little straight edge, probably like a paint stick or something like that, to help me make sure that I get them exactly the way I want them. I also have just a little bit of rough edges here. I'm going to go ahead and clean them up a little bit too, but I don't want to create a round over, so I want to be careful that I'm sanding it nice and straight to get a nice straight edge here, so that I don't have a goofy little edge in the profile when it's all done. And I don't know, maybe I'll look into a different template bit, one that's maybe a little bit longer, where I can glue these together before I do any of this stuff, and then I could just do it all in one shot instead of doing it in two like what I'm doing here. The other thing I noticed is this piece has been sitting here for a couple days, and it has cupped a little bit, as you can see. So I've already kind of pushed it on here. I know it'll push back to this once I glue it, just not, again, exactly what I want. And it's not like my shop is humid. I have electric heat in here. I do turn the heat down to about 54 degrees or something like that when I'm not in here, but otherwise it's not humid in here. So I don't know exactly why this did it, other than, you know, the wood was only here for maybe 2 days from the mill before I planed it and started this project. Then maybe I should have gave the wood more time to acclimate to my shop, or maybe after the glue up, if I would have gave it a little more time, I'm not sure. But at any rate, it's cupped a little bit, so I'm pretty sure it'll push out without any problems, but long term I don't know what that's gonna mean for the integrity of this project. So I'm going to get this all sanded out, get this cut out, and then we'll come back when we glue the piece on. We'll let it dry overnight and then get on with the final process. I've got this piece all cut out with my jigsaw, and I'm a little bit bummed out because my alignment is not perfect. If I get my pattern lined up exactly the way that it's supposed to be, I'm just a little bit shy in this corner right here. So I'm going to have to just fudge it over just a little bit, so my pattern is not going to be perfect. It's going to be off by about that much on this side. So next time, I knew I kind of wanted to stay away from these lines further just in case, but I wanted to make sure I had area to clean up the glue. If I would have just stayed back a little bit more, I would have been fine. I'm really close right here for some reason, and it's funny because I took a lot of time to lay this out to make sure that this wouldn't happen, but yet here we are. So I don't know exactly why that is, why it's off by that little bit, but at any rate, we're going to go ahead, we're going to get some glue on here, and we're going to get it glued together. So let's get it. I don't want a boatload of, I don't want excess glue. I'm prepared to wipe it off if need be, but there's no reason to have just gobs of squeeze out everywhere. You obviously want some. That's the indication that you have enough glue, but you don't want such a huge excess that it's just running out everywhere. And I will be building this again and learning from my mistakes, and kind of what this video is about, so that maybe you can learn from my mistakes too. I'm not afraid to show them. We all make mistakes, is kind of what it is. That's how we learn, and you have to start somewhere. So if you just dive in, make some mistakes, and learn from them, you'll just be better because of it. I had hoped maybe I could flip it or move it around in one way or another to take care of that mistake, but there's just, it's only going to go on one way. If you flip it over, nothing lines up at all. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's go ahead and get this on there. And as you see what I'm saying here, I just want to nudge it over enough to where this mistake will get removed. I don't know exactly why, but I'm lined up pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that, and I think I got good alignment, so I'm gonna go ahead and get a clamp right here, even though I feel it wiggling a little bit on me. Not too tight, so I can push it if I need to, and I do. Alright, now I'm just going to go around this and put a boatload of clamps on it, and make sure that I got it squeezed together good. I'm seeing very little to no squeeze out in the center here, which kind of bothers me because I don't think it has good contact. So I'm going to clean up the squeeze out that I have real quick, and then I'm going to figure out how I can weight or clamp the middle of that a little bit better. The main reason I want to get all of the squeeze out is because it's going to be extremely difficult to do if I let it dry there, and then my router bit is going to be using that for a guide to trim this top piece down, so that wouldn't work very well. I just can't get a good angle to see in there to know for sure that I've got good contact. And I don't have anything that's like super heavy that I can set in the middle here to press it down if it isn't. There we go. I'm going to let that dry overnight, and tomorrow we'll come back in here and we're going to take the clamps off and see what we got. See you then. The glue is dried overnight. I've got the clamps off, and we are ready to get this in the router table and trim this top ring down on the outside edge the same as the bottom. So what I was meaning all along is I've got my router bit adjusted where now the bearing is going to use the finished side that I finished with the template to cut this down to match both sides. So now this will be the template right here. I feel a little bump of glue right here I'm going to clean off before we get started. But we're basically ready to go here. So some of this, there's way more wood here than what we want to try to take one bite at a time at. As you can see, it's sticking out pretty good. So using my start pin, I'm just going to try and knock some of this down until we get to the point where I can just take it all at once. And I might just work in little sections, finish it, work in a little section. But at any rate, let's get going. I've got the bearing set where it's going to ride up a little bit higher on this, so any of this glue that's right here won't interfere with the bearing. And since the bit and the bearing are the exact same size, it's not going to remove any additional material from here. I've got my start pit in. That is what we're going to use to support the workpiece to bring it into the router bit. Okay, now that I'm pretty much wearing it, there we got it. The outside is finished. And you saw at one point there, it tried to push it back at me. And the reason it did that is because I was not up against my start pin at that point in time. And it tried to kick back on me. So that's why the start pin is so important. and to remain conscious that you're up against it. At any rate, with that done, I'm going to clean this mess up, and then we are ready to put this router bit in the router and trim router and go ahead and clean up the inside. I have my flush trim router bit in my trim router now, and I'm got it set where the bearing is just going to ride on the edge of this surface. I don't want to get down where it's curved where it holds it out. So it's just going to get down on this surface right here, and that should cut the inside of this to the exact shape of the inside that we already have. So I'm going to get started on that, and the same thing, there's a little bit of meat, a little too much here and there, so I'll just work at it light until I get to removing the entire part. Okay, so now a little bit of what I was afraid of here. I think I can sand it out and kind of hide it that way, but because I was off on that one section that I was, when I glued it together, I was talking about, there's a little nick in the wood still from the jigsaw, so not too bad. I guess I can live with it, but otherwise it's coming out really nice. Of course, now I'm bumping into my clamp, so I can't go any further till I rotate it and move my clamp. But I'm going to go ahead and work the rest of these out same way, then we'll come back and take a look. I've got all the excess material removed with the router. In a couple of places there was some squeeze out that I didn't get cleaned up well, that has created a couple of little lumps and bumps here and there. So I want to put a light round over on the inside and outside of this, and probably a chamfer on the bottom corner. But I need to go through and hand sand some of this. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a little bit chattery right here, and there's a couple other little spots that are a little chattery. And then here is where I would cut in too far with the jigsaw, and I kind of knew I did that. It's actually into this side here, it didn't happen, but here it also happened. So there's no way I can hand sand all of that out of there. Maybe there is. I might find a way to work that out, even if I take a little drill bit or something and just run it through there once or twice to make this a little sharper. No one will notice. It's just some mistake that I'm going to need to cover up, and I'll probably do that before I do the roundovers. But I've got some 150 sandpaper here, and I just want to go through and kind of clean up these inside edges and get them all nice and smooth. They're not horrible, like I said, it's just a few places, but I'll go ahead now and just get it all cleaned up so that when I run the roundover bit on here, the bearing's not kind of running over these little bumps and making that bumpy as well. So I'm going to go ahead and sand this, and then I'm going to figure out a way to fix my mistakes. I'll make sure to show you how I do that, and I don't have, it'd be nice to have a Dremel or something with a little drum sander, but I don't have that, so I'll figure out a different way to do it and get it to look just as nice. I mean, all in all, I'm really happy with what I've got here. It's not going to take a lot to get this cleaned up and finished up, so just a little sanding, a good 20 or 30 minutes worth of hand sanding here to get all the little ripples and stuff out, and then I'll be ready to put a cove on it, and I'll just use a sample piece to set my my cove bit to the depth I want in my router. I don't want a serious cove. I was thinking about maybe just sanding the edge over, but I think a little round over would look a lot nicer than than just trying to sand over the edge a little bit. I don't think I want it that sharp looking. So I'm going to sand away for a little bit, and then we're going to fix those mistakes and get some roundovers on. So we'll be back when I'm done sanding. So I was digging around in my stash of tools, and I found what's called a rotary file. It was still in the package, didn't even know I had it, and that is what I'm going to use to clean these corners up. So I'm just going to lean it in a little bit and get in there and just remove and it's just going to kind of reshape this corner a little bit. I can sand out anything that gets a little bit weird. I'm okay with that, but I need to get those grooves out of there. And for whatever reason, I already did one here and got it cleaned up pretty good, but this one, I cleaned this one up. I'm pretty happy with that. The walnut is much harder than the cherry to do this with, so the walnut takes a few more minutes. And the reason this happened to me in the first place is because the bearing on the bowl bit did not ride in the template right, and I cut this out too close to what the template was, so I kind of did this to myself. But at any rate, I've found a way to correct it and save the project. That's the main thing here. So I'm going to keep working on this until I get it out, and we're going to come back and get our roundovers on. On a piece of scrap, I've figured out what I want for a roundover, and unfortunately I failed to press record. So I have already put the roundovers on here thinking that we were recording, and we weren't. But I still need to put the chamfer on the bottom, and a couple of the edges are a little bit sharp. So I just kind of want to go through with my sandpaper and just knock that little sharp spot out just like that, so that it just looks a little bit more, because I didn't set the roundover bit quite as deep as it was intended to be. But that's okay, because I want a super soft roundover on this. But I think that it makes it look really nice. The bearing didn't ride through here and through here quite as good as it did through this one. By me fixing my little mistake here, I opened this one up slightly more. But I think all in all, you can't really tell. There's a little weird spot right here. I'll sand that out as well as I'm going. But I've got a little more sanding to do on this side, and then we'll go ahead and get the chamfer on this bottom edge. So I'm really liking what I've got here, and I don't think I'm going to put a chamfer on the bottom. I think I'm just going to use this same roundover just to soften this bottom edge up just a little bit. I think that's going to work out just perfect. I got a little bit of tear out right here from when I made the first piece. I'm going to have to put a little bit of wood filler in there. I've got the walnut wood filler that I'll put in. And then I've got a little more sanding to do on the outside edge, but all in all, man, I think we're looking really good here. I'm liking this. The few mistakes I made here are not killing this at all, so I'm pretty happy with what I've got. Let's go ahead and put that roundover on this bottom. If I don't like the roundover, I can always put the chamfer on it afterwards. like I say, the whole idea here is just to soften the edges. I think that is going to be perfect. It's a little bit wonky. I don't know if it's because of the board. This board's not perfect. Maybe just a little bit. But my glue up worked out pretty good. I've got good alignment. We're just a tick off right here. I thought we were going to be perfect, but we're just like a 32nd of an inch or something like that. From the inside, it looks like we have pretty good alignment, so I'm not disliking that at all. But what I need to do now is just a bunch more sanding. So I'm going to, right now I haven't used anything except for 150 grit, and I need to just get it all where I'm happy with it with the 150, and then I'm going to hit it with maybe some 120 and then some 220, and then we'll be getting close. But when each time I switch grits on the sandpaper, we'll come back and we'll take a look at what's going on. And where I was worried about when I glued it up too, that it wasn't going to be super tight inside because I didn't have a ton of squeeze out, it actually looks really good. It pulled in a lot tighter than I thought it did, so I'm really happy with this. Some more sanding and we will be ready to go. I'm all done sanding this with the 150. I think I said that I was going to sand it with 150 and then 120 and then 220. And I'm not. 150 and 220. But I rolled up some of this 150 to help me get into these corners right here and get them all sanded and cleaned up. And that seems to be where I have a little bit of my mist glue residue in a couple of spots. And I've got that out. 99% of it anyway. I'm pretty happy with it. So I am now ready to move on to the 220 and give this thing a good sanding with 220. And then we will be really close to a finished product here. I'm looking forward to that. I'm wanting to see this done. So after we sand it with the 220, we're going to have to spray it with water and then let it dry. And what the water is going to do is the water is going to raise the grain, and then we will sand it with 220 again. Then when it gets cleaned, like if it ever gets put in the sink and cleaned, and I'm sure it will, the wood grain won't raise when it gets in the water because it's already been raised by spraying it with water. So this shouldn't take too awful long. We just need to get the scratch marks out of it from the 150 sandpaper, and then we'll be ready to give it a spritz with the water. So I'm going to keep sanding. I couldn't be happier with this. I think this is going to look awesome. Worked right through those couple of mistakes. So I think we're going to be just fine. I'm going to finish sanding it with the 220, then we'll come back and spray it down. The first round of 120 sanding is finished, so now I am ready to get this spritzed down with some water and get this grain raised up. And what I kind of like about when you spritz it with water, it gives you a real good indication of what it's going to look like with the oil on it. So we don't want to soak it, but we want to get it good and wet. It's also going to show me where I I have some glue. So those areas I will be sanding some more. So as you can see, I have some glue right here that needs to be worked on. I have a little glue right in here that needs to be worked on. Just go ahead and get all this nice and wet. I got some paper towel in my hand because we don't need to like leave it saturated. We just need to get it wet so the grain will raise up. But that gives you a really good idea of what it's going to look like with oil on it. And I do have some glue in here. I have some more sanding to do in some areas to get this glue out. So that will be, it's not too bad, but there is a little bit of glue. And this tells the story too. This will show you right where that glue is. And it's better to get it out now because once you put your oil on, hopefully you can see that glue that's still stuck right there. Then it'll just show up like a sore thumb. There's a little bit in here too. All in all, not bad. I like it. There's some grain on the edge here that I really kind of like right here. I like how those two met together like that. I'm really fond of that. I think it looks pretty cool. Okay, now we have to let this dry, and then we will sand it one more time with 220, making sure to get any of our glue residue that may be left behind here out. And then we'll be ready. We'll let this dry. Alright guys, I've got this all sanded with the 220 and I've started wiping some oil on. I don't have it completely covered. And I'm using the Howard's cutting board oil. And you can get this at the big box stores. And it's this is good for seasoning it. So this is going to take 3 coats. I'm going to put one on now. Then I'll let it sit overnight. And I'll put a second one on tomorrow, and I'll let it sit again, and then I'll put a third one on. And I'm not seeing much glue that I missed or glue residue. I see a couple little spots, and I don't know if we'll be able to see them on the camera or not, but there's one little dinky spot right there, and there's a dinky little spot inside of there that I missed. But it took the wood probably a half hour to dry from the getting it sprayed down and getting it all wet. And then I spent about another 40 minutes or so sanding it and just getting it exactly where I want it. The oil really wakes it up The cherry has a gorgeous look to it. I like the cherry and the maple a lot, and the cherry and the walnut here outside a lot. The maple is of course a little more laid back. It doesn't scream quite as much as the cherry and the maple do, but it's beautiful in its own right. It has a very nice grain to it, and of course we only have a little piece of it here, so it's not like it's the standout or the star of the show, but it definitely adds to it. And I'm really happy with how this is turning out. So we're gonna get the rest of this oil rubbed on here, get the sides coated up real nice, and get the bottom done. And this will be one step closer to being in service. Some of the areas that the router bit moved down on me are right here. That might be a little tick of glue that I'm seeing right here too. But there's one of my mistakes with the wood putty. And then there's a couple more right here around the corner. And there might be just a little bit of glue right there too. I'm not going to let it break my heart. I think the next one of these I make, I will definitely do a better job at controlling my glue. I better clean up, get a wet rag out here, make sure I get it cleaned up really good. This is that part of the grain that I thought met together really cool, kind of by accident, but I like that. My rag's leaving little bits of residue here and there, but that's alright. Little blobs of cotton. I think all in all, for the first one of these I've ever made, I'm pretty happy. I think it's turned out pretty nice. And they'll just get better with time. You learn from your mistakes, right? So you just jump in and go. Alright guys, I think we've got everything coated now. It's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the sides of it, and I'm really happy with that, especially for the mistakes that I made right here and how well I got myself out of that. I really like that. Alright, I am happy as a camper. Alright guys, that's all we got for this time. If you enjoyed yourself, click on one of those two videos that are going to pop up next to me, and if you haven't subscribed yet, I would greatly appreciate it if you would consider doing so. And remember to always respect the power of your power tools.